Ben Macintyre, Agent Sonya, Moscow's most daring wartime spy. Embark on a thrilling journey through the life of Ursula Kuczynski, a daring wartime spy also known as Agent Sonya, in Ben Macintyre's gripping account. From Ursula's initial passion for political activism and socialism, the story traverses her transformation into a high-ranking Soviet spy, and her ultimate disillusionment with the regimes she once supported. Witness Ursula's personal sacrifices, double life as a mother and a spy, and her relentless pursuit of justice.
Ursula Kuczynski, a committed revolutionary. Born into a wealthy and intellectual Berlin family, Ursula Kuczynski was a staunch communist from an early age. Driven by her passion for political activism, she distributed communist literature and organized protests. Her life took an unexpected turn when Ursula and her non-communist architect husband, Rudi Hamburger, moved to Shanghai in 1930. There, she connected with spy Agnes Smedley, who introduced her to Soviet spy Richard Sorge. Under Sorge's tutelage, Ursula began actively aiding the Soviets, using her newfound status as a mother as a cover to discreetly support the communist cause. Born in 1907, Ursula Kuczynski grew up in a well-to-do Berlin family that interacted with great thinkers, like Marxist Karl Liebknecht. While her family leaned left, Ursula took it a step further by passionately diving into political activism. At just 17, she became a card-carrying member of the Communist Party, determined to make a difference. Over time, Ursula distributed communist literature, organized protests, and even learned how to use weapons for the revolutionary cause she was certain would emerge. She later met and married the architect Rudi Hamburger, who, despite being left-leaning, was not a communist. When Rudi accepted a job offer in Shanghai in 1930, Ursula accompanied him, eager to contribute to the growing communist movement in China. However, expatriate society in Shanghai was stifling for Ursula, as her social status demanded participation in high society gatherings rather than political activism. That changed when she met Agnes Smedley, a socialist journalist who also happened to be a spy. After their meeting at the swanky Cathay Hotel, Smedley informed Ursula that someone would visit her soon. This visitor was none other than Richard Sorge, the highest-ranking Soviet spy in China. Recognizing Ursula's commitment to communism, Sorge asked if she was willing to support the Chinese revolutionaries. Without hesitation, Ursula agreed, offering her apartment as a safe house for Sorge's meetings with other revolutionaries while her husband was at work. Ursula's life took on a new layer when she gave birth to her son, Michael. Sorge saw this as an opportunity for Ursula to further her support for the Soviets discreetly, as her role as a refined, upper-class mother provided the perfect cover. Thus, Ursula Kuczynski's journey as a dedicated communist and revolutionary facilitator continued, proving that even amidst the most unsuspecting circumstances, true commitment can thrive. Ursula's transformation into Sonya. The dashing and charismatic Richard Sorge played a pivotal role in Ursula's transformation from an ordinary wife and mother to secret agent Sonya. As their intimacy grew, Richard introduced Ursula to his circle and she began working as his accomplice. Although their relationship ended abruptly when Richard was called back to Moscow, he had already set Ursula on her path to becoming a skilled Soviet spy. At the training center in Vorobeevo, she learned elements of spycraft and took on her first mission with unwavering commitment, making sure her son Michael was by her side. From a wife and mother, Ursula was initiated into the thrilling world of espionage through her lover, Richard Sorge. As they grew closer, he began to involve her in his covert operations, and she took on the role of a spy, channeling her upper-class social connections for intelligence that Richard would pass on to Moscow. He gave her the code name Sonya, marking the beginning of her secret life. Ursula's marriage to Rudi, however, suffered as a result of her newfound spy career. Upon Richard's request, she hid a Chinese fugitive in their home, which forced her to reveal her involvement in a Soviet spy ring to Rudi. Although he reluctantly agreed due to his communist beliefs, their marriage was irrevocably strained. When Richard abruptly left for Moscow, he continued to have an influence on Ursula's life. Thanks to his recommendation, she was invited to Moscow to receive formal training as a Soviet spy. Despite the difficult decision to leave her family behind, Ursula seized the opportunity and headed to the training center in Vorobeevo. There, she sharpened her skills in spycraft and pledged loyalty to the Soviet Republic. After completing her training, Ursula was given her first mission in Mukden, Manchuria, to support the Chinese resistance against Japanese invasion. Partnering with Johann Patra, known as Ernst, she agreed to undertake the mission only if her son Michael could accompany her. The transformation of Ursula into Sonya was now complete, setting her on an extraordinary path as a fearless secret agent. Dangerous Liaisons of Spies. In 1943, Ursula and Johann, two undercover agents, sailed from Prague to Shanghai in an attempt to reinforce the Manchurian resistance movement against Japanese invaders. Acting as a couple for their cover, they navigated through the perils in Mukden while connecting with local communists and fulfilling their mission. Despite the constant risk of capture and the eventual need to abandon their projects, their resourcefulness and dedication proved crucial in establishing a mediating link between the resistance fighters in Manchuria and the Soviet Union. Upon embarking on their covert mission, Ursula and Johann presented themselves as a couple, playing out a seemingly innocent romance while carefully managing their covers. Johann posed as a businessman dedicated to working in Mukden, while Ursula worked under the pretense of a saleswoman for a Shanghai bookshop. With these disguises, they facilitated communication between Vladivostok and Mukden by secretly transporting a concealed transmitter in their shipments of books. Navigating the treacherous environment of Manchuria, plagued with famine and social unrest, Ursula and Johann faced significant risks from both the Japanese and local communist cells. Working as agents for Soviet intelligence, their critical objective was to reinforce connections between the Manchurian resistance and the Soviets. Being younger and less experienced, Ursula faced more frequent and dangerous situations, knowing well that she was dispensable. As their mission progressed, Ursula and Johann managed to gather an impressive amount of information that greatly benefited their cause. Evading detection, Ursula would traverse the border into China to collect essential parts for their transmitter and make tactical connections, such as with the communist rebel, Chu. In one of her daring exploits, Ursula purchases ingredients for explosives which Chu later used in a strategic railway attack. Yet, as their mission thrived, so did the attention it drew from the watchful eyes of the Japanese army. Determined to ensure the imperative information reached Moscow, Chu introduced Ursula and Johann to two more communist rebels, Wu and Shushin. Masquerading as domestic help, the newcomers were trained in the art of transmitting intelligence. Ursula's close bond with Shushin not only deepened their shared investment in the fight against the Japanese invasion but also brought to light the vulnerability of their situation. The fears of apprehension were not unfounded soon enough, as Shushin was captured by the Japanese. Consequently, Ursula and Johann received the order from Vladivostok to evacuate immediately and without explanation, leaving their successful yet perilous project to an abrupt end. Personal sacrifices of espionage. Ursula and Johann, deeply entwined in a true love affair while working as spies, are suddenly separated for new assignments. Ursula experiences the harsh reality of the espionage life, losing loved ones, facing the dangers of Stalin's Great Purge, and making personal sacrifices, all committed to her belief in communism. Tasked with gathering intelligence in Switzerland, she orchestrates a daring plan to assassinate Hitler with her newfound recruits. Ursula and Johann's world of espionage took them to Mukden, preparing a foundation for a Chinese revolution. Abruptly called away, they learned a harsh lesson about the necessity of sometimes cutting one's losses. Their orders sent them down separate paths, Ursula to Shanghai and Johann to Peking, where he awaited a new partner. The thought of parting was agonizing, especially since their staged romance had become a genuine love affair, with Ursula now pregnant with Johann's child. Ursula's career in the shadows required immense personal sacrifices. In Shanghai, she reunited with Rudi, her former comrade, ready to work for Soviet intelligence. Their mission took them to Warsaw, but Ursula soon grew weary of the mundane tasks. When she was called back to Russia, she faced another painful separation from her family. Ursula's return to Russia was a mixed experience. The joy of reuniting with old friends was dampened by the devastating impact of Stalin's Great Purge. Despite her potentially vulnerable position, Ursula emerged unscathed and remained committed to communism. As the Nazi threat grew, Ursula's next mission took her to Switzerland, a neutral country teeming with spies. There, she recruited Alexander Foote and sent him to Munich, where he and another recruit, Len Burton, began working under her guidance. Eventually, their initial objective of gathering intelligence morphed into a daring plot to assassinate Hitler during a lunchtime gathering. Foiled Hitler assassination plan. Ursula's daring plan to assassinate Hitler by planting a suitcase bomb at his favored Munich restaurant was halted when the Molotov-Ribbentrop non-aggression pact was signed. Devastated, she turned her attention to practical matters, such as obtaining a British passport through a marriage of convenience that eventually turned into genuine love. Her work in Switzerland proved crucial, as she transmitted vital information for Soviet intelligence. However, when her cover was nearly blown by her own nanny, Moscow ordered her and her husband to England, deeming her a threat to their operations. Ursula's plan to kill Hitler was well underway. Foote and Burton were stationed in Munich, poised to plant a suitcase bomb under the Führer's favorite table at Osteria, Bavaria. However, the mission was abruptly halted when the Molotov-Ribbentrop non-aggression pact was signed on August 23, 1939. Ursula called off the assassination attempt, recalled her agents, and grappled with her disheartenment. Seeking solace, she focused on practical matters, realizing the value of a British passport. She proposed marriage to Len Burton, arranged a divorce from Rudy, and transformed their marriage of convenience into a lasting, loving bond. Yet, domestic bliss couldn't shield her from the reality that Soviet intelligence still had work for her to do. In June 1940, Ursula was sent to Switzerland to meet with Soviet chief spy, Alexander Rado. Tasked with transmitting microfiche reports to Moscow, she unearthed her radio from a Swiss forest and set to work. Disaster struck when her nanny, Olga Muth, almost exposed her cover, fearing for the safety of Ursula's children. Olga's attempts to denounce Ursula to the authorities failed, however, a neighbor alerted Ursula to the potential danger. Ursula's message to Moscow was met with a quick and decisive response. She had become a threat, with too many people aware of her true identity. Instructed to leave Switzerland immediately, Ursula and Len departed for England, their Swiss adventure at an end. The Unassuming Atomic Spy. Living a double life as a seemingly respectable housewife, Ursula was the essential link in passing critical nuclear secrets from German physicist Karl Fuchs to the Soviet Union during World War II. In their clandestine meetings, Ursula transmitted scientific information, documents, and replica keys to her Soviet handlers, all while maintaining an unassuming demeanor that outwitted even the most skilled counterintelligence agents. June 22, 1941 marked the moment Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union, unexpectedly uniting Britain and the Soviet Union as allies. This new alliance, however, didn't mean Soviet agents embedded in Britain would halt their espionage work. Ursula, playing the role of an ordinary housewife, was one of these agents who partnered with Karl Fuchs, a German physicist recruited to work on the development of an atomic bomb. Karl Fuchs shared the same communist values as Ursula and, much like her, he too had taken refuge in Britain. British intelligence saw the atomic bomb as a potential game-changer in the war, but they withheld their plans from the Soviets. Believing this to be unfair, Fuchs chose to secretly keep the Soviets informed, utilizing Ursula as his primary contact. Tasked with this pivotal assignment, Ursula began her double life by exchanging covert messages with Fuchs, locations and times where they would rendezvous to relay the precious atomic secrets. By the end of their espionage endeavors, Ursula successfully handed over 750 pages of highly classified scientific data to the Soviet Union, marking one of the largest information leaks in espionage history. Her responsibilities didn't stop at merely radio transmissions though. Ursula created microphotographs of intricate documents, enabling the delivery of otherwise undeliverable information, and smuggled out replica keys providing access to repositories of confidential data. The mission held an immeasurable value to Soviet intelligence and was given the codename Project Enormo, a project which even garnered the attention of Joseph Stalin himself. Ursula's seemingly ordinary suburban life belied her efforts in organizing one of the most significant transfers of state secrets in history. Known as Mrs. Burton, she lived in Oxfordshire with her family, and displayed no signs of a German accent. Not a single suspicion was raised among her neighbors, nor did she draw the attention of seasoned MI5 counterintelligence agents. However, one woman working for MI5's counterintelligence grew curious, putting Ursula's carefully crafted cover at risk. The unseen Cold War chess. Millicent Bagot, a formidable British intelligence agent, was closely monitoring Ursula, a suspected Soviet spy. In 1943, after the Quebec Agreement was signed between Britain, the USA, and Canada, a leak of its details made its way to Moscow, intensifying suspicions of espionage. Ursula had a unique opportunity to infiltrate the US military by recruiting German resistors in Project Hammer, ultimately passing valuable intelligence to the Soviets. By maintaining her cover as a dutiful housewife, Ursula successfully avoided detection, even from the watchful Millicent. Under the guise of an eccentric spinster, Millicent Bagot was actually one of Britain's most tenacious intelligence agents. Assigned to MI5's F Division, Millicent was tasked with ferreting out communists and subversives, a role she excelled in. In her crosshairs was a woman named Ursula, who was monitored since applying for a British passport. The 1943 Quebec Agreement was signed between Britain, the US, and Canada, pledging to work together on developing an atomic bomb without disclosing the project to their Soviet allies. When this top-secret agreement leaked to Moscow just 16 days later, historians recognized it as an early catalyst of the Cold War. Millicent believed Ursula was the source of this leak, as she always seemed to be just a step ahead of British intelligence. As Karl Fuchs moved to Washington following the agreement, Ursula was assigned to Project Hammer. This covert operation offered her the perfect chance to recruit a network of informants, intending to supply information to both the US and the Soviets. Millicent closely observed Ursula, but her efforts were thwarted by Soviet double agents embedded within British intelligence. Despite the dangerous game she played, Ursula adeptly maintained her cover as an ordinary housewife, keeping her home immaculate and caring for her children. She subtly conducted transmissions to Moscow, while her unsuspecting Summertown neighbors remained entirely oblivious. Ursula's unparalleled ability to deceive those around her allowed her to feed invaluable data to Moscow, contributing to the fall of Nazi Germany. Unwavering idealism amidst espionage. Ursula's steadfast commitment to her ideals shone as she adapted to life in the charming village of Great Rollright, even as her espionage work took a tumultuous turn. Despite challenges, including the betrayal of her fellow spy Alexander Foote, Ursula remained undaunted. Though she eventually found refuge in East Germany, leading a successful writing career, her convictions drove her to stand up against the oppression she witnessed within the country, remaining an unwavering force for change. Ursula and her family settled into Great Rollright, Oxfordshire in 1945, where she thrived as a beloved community figure. Her seemingly normal life involved baking delicious scones and hosting the church bell ringers for tea after Sunday Mass. In contrast, her espionage work faced significant challenges. Ursula's commitment to her ideals remained steadfast. However, by 1947, Alexander Foote, one of Ursula's co-conspirators in an assassination plot against Hitler, became disillusioned with his double life as a British citizen and Soviet spy. Foote defected, revealing valuable information about his espionage career to British authorities, but he falsely claimed Ursula had already retired. Consequently, her case caught Millicent Bagot's attention at MI5. Subsequently, Jim Scarden, MI5's chief interrogator, visited Ursula in Great Rollright. He mistakenly revealed his belief that she had retired after her Swiss mission. Although he lacked evidence of Ursula's espionage in Britain, she was unsettled. She then sought Moscow's permission to depart for Communist East Germany, but received no response. As British intelligence continued to observe Ursula, the Soviet military successfully tested its own nuclear weapons in 1949 in Kazakhstan. Ursula and Klaus Fuchs had provided them with valuable secrets, escalating Cold War tensions. In January 1950, Ursula found a letter permitting her to leave for East Germany. Fuchs was arrested the following month, prompting Ursula and her family to escape to Germany in March. Her return to Britain would take 4 decades. In East Germany, Ursula worked for the State Press Department and went on to write best-selling children's books under the pen name Ruth Werner. Her autobiography, Sonya's Report, disclosed her life as a Soviet spy and became an instant bestseller. Despite her security and achievements in East Germany, Ursula disapproved of the government's authoritarian practices, which contradicted her vision of communism. At the age of 82, she publicly supported the country's growing protest movement in 1989, demonstrating her unwavering belief in change and defying authority as a resolute idealist.
Agent Sonya is a fascinating exploration of the life and times of one of the most enigmatic spies in history, Ursula Kuczynski. As a committed communist who aided the Soviet Union, her life was marked by both triumphs and heartbreaks. Her countless missions and achievements were cast against the backdrop of a world filled with turmoil, war, and political intrigue. Eventually, Ursula grew disillusioned with the very system she supported, eventually championing the protest movement in East Germany at the age of 82. In the end, her life's journey exemplifies the complexity of balancing personal beliefs with the consequences of engaging in espionage.